Hey logo designers, this is Michael from the Logo Package, and today is our final devlog for Logo Package Forge, which means that we get to review how the launch went. So the Logo Package Forge launch was between May 12th and May 18th. And leading up to the launch, I was a little bit worried that it was not going to be one of my better launches. I felt like the product was really good. I had validation from my customers. The thing that was concerning me was just sort of the macroeconomic situation, a lot of uncertainty about tariffs, and, there's just kind of a downturn in the economy. And then also the fact that my affiliates just did not seem to be buying in. In previous launches, I have a network of 150 or so affiliates, and I would let them know that I was going to have a product launch, and they would make reels on Instagram, Facebook posts. They would send out newsletters, make YouTube videos, and they just simply weren't responding to my requests to work together on this launch. Now, obviously, some of my affiliates, my closest affiliates, for the most part, decided to help me share, but it just didn't seem like they were going to put as much effort into it as they had in the past. And so I was just worried coming into launch that it was not going to be as big of a success. So let's see if those worries were well-founded, and let's take a look at the results of the launch. First, I want to talk to you about my strategy, though. When I do a launch, I usually have 3 to 5 major features of the new tool that I want to highlight leading up to the launch. So in the 1 or 2 weeks before launch, I will send out emails, and those emails will contain a description of one of the features and a video. So the features for Logo Package Forge that I highlighted were the font organization, the fact that you can organize your fonts into folders in Illustrator using Logo Package Forge. I sent out an email showcasing how you can test unlimited logo type layouts if you want to have multi-line logo types, and if you want to try those logo types out in all the different fonts. Then I sent out an email about font pairing, where you can compare different fonts automatically using Forge. And the final feature email was showing off how you could lock up logo marks with the logo types that you generate as well. And that strategy has always served me very well. It gets people excited, it keeps their attention, and it keeps reminding them that there will be a launch so that they are prepped and ready to engage with the launch when it occurs. The actual launch, as I said, went from May 12th to May 18th, and my launch offer was to get 40% off if you used the code LAUNCH40. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the results now. This is basically sort of the big reveal of it all. There were basically 250 sales, and it was $11.6 thousand in sales from the week, with 747 views of the product page and 249 sales. That's about a 33% conversion rate. We can see that the launch day, which was Monday, May 12th, was the best day for earnings. It was close to $4,000. And this is a pretty common pattern with my launches, at least, that the second day and third day it tapers off, and maybe there's a bump in interest towards the end. But with the Forge launch, I sent out 2 final emails on the last day, and those emails contained direct links to the checkout page as opposed to the sort of landing page with all the information on it. And I'm not 100% sure if the direct links helped out, or it was just the fact that there was urgency that this was the last day to get that really big deal. When I looked at the conversion rates, it looked like people coming from my website converted at about 23%, and people coming from the emails converted at about 20%. So I can't conclusively say that having those direct links made the difference on this final day, on that Sunday of May 18th, but I feel like it did. So I'm going to start using those links more than my landing pages when I'm trying to sell something and not just inform people about my product. So let's look at some more specific details here. Who was sending me sales? Where were my sales coming from? So we can see that my website, logopackage.com, had the most views, the most sales, and the highest conversion rate at almost 50%. And 8,300 out of that, roughly 12,000, came from the website. So this would have been people clicking my links through to the website, and then once they were on the website, clicking the buy link to open up the Gumroad product page. Gumroad, if you're not familiar, is an online marketplace vendor where you can set up products and sell them. They started off with digital products. I believe you can sell physical products now as well. But they've been around since like 2013, and I use them to sell all of my products. So these conversions are going to track, people who converted ultimately from the Gumroad purchase page, but they were sent to that purchase page via my website here and then converted. And then with the runner-up was direct email. So this was either people clicking a link directly to the Gumroad sales page or coming from an email. I don't do any instant messaging. So the emails that I sent out converted at about 24%, which is great. And that resulted in almost $3,000 worth of sales. And then finally, the top referral source of note is Gumroad itself. And so Gumroad makes recommendations via other products that are similar via their storefront. And so they had a conversion rate of 16.2% and resulted in 6 sales for me as well. So that's none of my own promotion, nothing I had to do. It was simply the fact that I use Gumroad to sell my products. There were other places that conversions came from, but these were the top 3. And then these are the top 10 locations that customers came from for this launch. It's no surprise to me, being that I'm US based, that the highest number of sales came from the United States. I have several large popular affiliates in Australia, so that is also no surprise to me. And then the UK and Canada being 3rd and 4th makes total sense. These other results, I can speculate, but I don't know exactly why the customers were coming from these countries. This is the top 10 countries that contributed to sales during the launch week. Okay, so I think it's important to look at this launch in comparison with launches of my other products. And what we can see from this chart is pretty clear that Forge was the lowest performing launch that I've had of any of my products, with Express 3, the current version of Logo Package Express, and Express being my flagship product. Obviously, the launch of that was the most successful launch I've ever had, with Express 2 following behind. Logo Package SWATCH, which allows you to gather color information from your branding projects, is right in the middle. And then when I launched Express version 1 for the first time, I only had a few affiliates, didn't have any pre-existing customers. So it was a little disheartening, even though it's really great to make, $12,000 in a week on a product launch. In comparison to other launches, it did kind of fall within my expectations that I could just kind of sense that this launch wasn't going to be as successful as other launches. And then we have some stats about the affiliate involvement, because like I said, I was not really feeling that affiliates were willing to be involved with this launch. I don't know what reasons they might have. They could be focusing on their own products. They could be finding changes to Google's algorithms, or the social media algorithms are making it hard for them to get views on certain types of content. I don't know what the reasons are, but we can see from this chart that the amount of affiliates who received commissions from sales during this launch was the second lowest of all time. And Express was my very first product launch, and I didn't have very many affiliates. So I almost kind of look at this as being sort of the worst performance in terms of affiliates getting sales. Express 3, again, newest version of flagship product. Makes sense that a lot of my affiliates got on board because of this product. So these numbers make sense to me, but it's still a little disappointing. And then we can see the percentage of sales from the launch that came from affiliates. So when we look at this, it makes a lot of sense that Express, the first product that I ever launched, was the most affiliate commissions. Affiliates made the most sales from promoting that product. It was new to all of their audiences. It was a new product. And I didn't have my own organic, SEO growth that would contribute to sales. I didn't have a big email list that would contribute to sales. So it makes a lot of sense that my first product had the most affiliate involvement. And you can kind of see that the products here and their rankings do follow that timeline. Express, then the second version of Express had less affiliates. Then the third version had even less percentage of affiliate sales. SWATCH being the second to last product that I've launched, and then finally Forge. But Forge was particularly low, with only 7% of the sales resulting from affiliate links. Again, I just think this was because affiliates weren't really involved in this launch, though the affiliates who did make videos and post reels and send newsletters, I'm so grateful to them. Every little bit helps, and they did make sales during the launch, but overall affiliate involvement just wasn't there on this launch. So I'm taking you back to the chart that I showed earlier, which was the overall sort of revenue from the launch week. And we have this sort of downward trend until we get to Forge. And this shows sort of major differences between my best launch and my worst launch. And this was kind of how I was looking at things initially. I was a little down about the performance of this launch, but then I remembered something that I thought was really important, which was that Express 2 and Express 3, in addition to being new products that new customers might come and find, they also were upgrades to pre-existing products. And I offered upgrades to my existing customers who already like the product and already use it and would be very excited that there's new features that they've been requesting. Those people were also participants in the launch. Whereas Forge is a brand new product. And while I do have customers that enjoy my products, they don't know if this tool is for them or not yet. Whereas a ton of people were already customers of these Express products and more than willing to pay some money to upgrade. So what I did is I removed all of the sales that came from existing customers and only looked at new sales. And when we look at things this way, we can see some pretty major shifts. First off, Express 3 is no longer the highest grossing. It's actually Logo Package Swatch, because Logo Package Swatch was also a new product. But we also see that while Forge is still the worst performing of any of the products, it's not really that far off the average, right? So if we look at this and we say, man, this was the top and this was the bottom, it's this huge gap. But if we look at only new customers coming in and being willing to purchase a new product, then it's pretty close to the average. And that context actually makes it a lot easier to stomach this number. And then even better is when we look at the quantity of sales, we see that Forge is basically almost tied for second place with the number of unique sales, right? So with Swatch was an outlier. Affiliates really got on board. They really helped promote. And it's just a simple, easy product that everyone understands and everyone needs who does branding work. So this is kind of an outlier. But we'll see that in terms of quantity of units sold, Forge outperformed Express 3 pretty nicely. And remember, if we're just looking at the sales revenue of all sales from the launch, then Express 3 is like way, way higher than Forge. But if we look at the number of people who were willing to take out their credit card, had never used the product before, and take a risk and buy a new tool, then actually Forge did really well. And I think that is a pretty good metric to judge this launch on. So through that lens, I think that the Forge launch was actually quite a success, and it has added a whole new revenue stream for my company. And I think it will continue to grow as people start to use it and leave reviews and post it as resources places. Additionally, with more time, I will be able to get my affiliates to share to their audiences. So that kind of changed my mindset from one of disappointment to one of success in terms of this launch. But there are still lessons to be learned here. And I think my 3 greatest takeaways from this experience are, one, that my launch techniques work. They generate customers, they generate a buzz, and I can convert people in my own audience at a pretty high rate to purchasing my products during a launch. I also learned that my affiliates, for whatever reason, are not participating like they used to. And I can do 2 things about that. I can either continue to work hard to bring in new affiliates whose audiences might not be saturated with my product being promoted to them, or I can focus on finding customers in other ways. And that brings me to the 3rd thing that I'm taking away from this launch, which is pretty strong evidence, and it may seem common sense, but that I need to work on building my own audience. So my company, my email list is about 13,000 to 14,000 people. And, you can see with just that email list what I'm able to do, but I don't generate any sort of regular content. And I think that I need to build an ecosystem that's bringing people to my mailing list and or building, an Instagram following. Although I think conversions are much higher from an email list than they ever are from anything that happens on Instagram. But I'm determined now, as a result of this Logo Package Forge launch, to really focus on building my own audience. And I have some pretty cool strategies to do that I'm ready to implement. And I think if you guys have been interested in this process, you'll definitely like what I'm working on in that regard, and I'm hoping I can share it with you. So thank you very much for following me through this process of creating Logo Package Forge and launching it. And I hope that getting a peek inside of a product launch with real numbers and real results and, both good and bad, I hope that that's really valuable for you and that you gain something from it. So thank you very much for watching.